1005. 1005. I caught myself on one of my prior live streams saying 104, I think it was, or 103. 1005 days since Richard vanished from the barracks right there at Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas, the Siamese sister city of Juarez, Mexico. And he didn't just vanish, something happened. We know that he is a whistleblower. He's a whistleblower not only to Child Protective Services with the child abuse, the child sex videos, but he's also made reports to the CID, we've learned, absolutely to the CID of sexual assault and mishandling of some things, paperwork, things like this. And now we're finding out that before we even knew that our son was missing, before we even called because nobody contacted us, um, that Richard had been brutally murdered, cut asunder, um, put in pieces, and divided and put in different locations because you heard of Vanessa Guillen's case, right? Well, this ain't that. This ain't that. That's what they wanted you to believe, that this and Richard isn't Vanessa Guillen. Richard is Richard Halliday. And Richard's at Fort Bliss. He was at Fort Bliss. Vanessa Guillen was at Fort Hood. But I want to make something very, very clear. The bad leaderships, the um, the bad leaders that created that mess at Fort Hood, and the appalling investigation into Gregory Morales and Vanessa Guillen were the same leaders over Richard's case. I think that's a very important message. The leaders were not removed, suspended, or whatever, the 14 leaders, until December 2020. Until after, we were still there in December. When we were leaving, that's when we were, I guess just right before we left El Paso, that's when that happened. And let's look at that. I have it right here, and I can show you that display. This is from Wiki, and it says on December 8th. So we left after that. And McCarthy, who was the Defense Secretary of Defense, announced the results of the investigation. 14 U.S. commanders and other leaders at Fort Hood, citing multiple leadership failures. These were the same leaders, okay, that was handling Richard's case. And I'm going to put that together for you so you understand that. The investigation found that there was a permissive environment of sexual assault and sexual harassment at Fort Hood. And I want to make sure everyone understands that was going on at Fort Bliss also. And I don't think it stopped. I don't think it has stopped. Okay, they have failed programs. And this failed leadership change is a failed program. Among those disciplined by McCarthy were Major General Scott L. Efland, Colonel Ralph Overland, and Command Sergeant Major Bradley Knapp. The Army suspended Major General Jeffrey Broadwater and Command Sergeant Major Thomas C. Kenney, pending the outcome of the new investigation onto the 1st Cavalry Division's command climate and program for preventing and responding to sexual harassment and assault. So these these same leaders that was going on at this time. I think Lieutenant General White, he was deployed at the time, so he was not relieved. But I just want to put it together that these are the same leaders because Fort Hood and Fort Bliss were connected. At that time, they were very connected. And so here is the timeline. July 5th, remains are confirmed to be Vanessa Guillen's. Okay? So the U.S. Secretary of the Army announced that he would order full independent review on 5 days later. Then, right here, Vanessa Guillen's family meets with President Trump. So, in between when Aguilar is indicted on 11 counts of relating to the death of Vanessa Guillen, and here, this right in here is when Richard went missing. Okay, so this is when it took them 5 days to just say, okay, now we're going to have a full independent review on this case. That happened July 10th. Richard went missing July 23rd. So it was chaotic. So many jobs they were shaking in their boots, and they were kicking cans, and they were kicking the trash can, and they were punching the walls, and they were trying to figure out a way that they could keep their job. And they were doing that, and all of a sudden they heard, oh, by the way, July 29th, we just found partial remains of Richard Halliday. And then a few days later, we just found more partial remains of Richard Halliday. And then between July 30th and December 8th, on October, the dates are between October 7th and October 19th. We just found partial remains of Richard Halliday in Mexico, in Juarez. By the way, he's in uniform. I think that they were really kicking. They were kicking the trash can, and punching the wall before partial remains of our son were being found. Now they were in cover-up mode. It was extreme cover-up mode. It was cold-blooded cover-up mode. We won't even contact the family. We will collect those partial remains, and we will keep them. We don't know where our son's remains are right now. We have 3 autopsy numbers. One of the El Paso County coroners, one of the military examiner's corridor, and then one of the Mexican coroner's office. We have those numbers. We have not, even in this meeting today that we had with Quantico, there was no denial of this information. No denial that Richard is still missing. His designation is no longer the first CONUS Deaths One Missing Soldier. It is the betrayed and murdered soldier. We want his remains. I'm gonna try to figure out what his exact designation is, because they have not denied that Richard has been brutally murdered, and that they have collected his body parts from different locations, and that they have conducted autopsy reports, and they have DNA and also dental um, proof that those are Richard's remains. Um, they didn't deny it. And this happened, you can say, how can this happen? How can you happen? Well, it happened under the same leadership as Vanessa Guillen. And they were panicking. They knew their jobs were on the line. And they had to keep this hush hush. At the highest levels, y'all. At the highest levels. You cannot do something like this. Hide the remains, the partial remains of a brutally murdered, missing soldier, and conduct a staged investigation and put him in cold case. Yeah, he's cold, all right. And put him in cold case and try to mislead the family into thinking that they just don't have answers. They just don't have answers. And our meeting today went exceptionally well as it could go with CID Quantico. And there is an investigation going forward. There is CID. I know her first name is Jessica Velkry. I think her last name is Velkry. I probably got that wrong. It's. Did I write it down? Did I write it down on my notes? I know that Rob did. Rob was leading the phone call today with CID Quantico, and why Richard's case is in Quantico, we don't know. That's a good question. But they said that during this meeting, it was a big shakeup of leadership, a big shakeup of how everything is organized and ran, and that this special agent, Jessica, will be going to El Paso. She will be going to El Paso, and she'll be conducting a full investigation there in El Paso. So that was good news. And I wrote some notes of what the CID will be looking at and what they'll be going forward to do in El Paso. Looking and working with the medical examiner there. We have the medical examiner's name. I think that she could definitely tell us if these leaks that we have are true or not. And nobody is denying them. And I've been out here, it's going on 2 weeks, talking about these leaks that we have been getting of autopsy reports on our son with autopsy numbers and locations being Red Rio Range. Two sets of partial remains were found there. Also in an undisclosed area. From my part, I believe that is when Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe was searching for Richard's remains at the Kamal Jabbar training area on Fort Bliss. Because of the other reports that we have that are being leaked in that correspond with that, being in December of 2020 and October 7th through the 19th, remains being found there at kilometer 29, right outside of Ciudad Juarez, the city of Juarez, on that street going towards that OXXO where you turn, if you're at kilometer 29 and you go towards that OXXO and you turn right up there, you get to Santa Teresa Port of Entry. You can look at the map. If you have a special, that was during COVID, so if you were essential, where law enforcement was absolutely essential, they could go where they wanted to go. But to go over the border into Mexico, This is where the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints play a very important role because they did have exemption. So if you were a Mormon, which is interesting, if you were a Mormon and if you were law enforcement, you had two exemptions. You could go over to Juarez with no problem to go to the Mormon temple over there. If you were law enforcement, then you also you could even arrest people, right? You could arrest people and even handcuff them, um, uh, and abduct them. Um, I'm just putting out information that they need to investigate because they've asked us to provide them with leads. They've asked us to be the investigators of our son's murder. And so here we are. And it was a very good day. And I'm looking forward to all that they will do when they get to El Paso. And also from their headquarters there at Quantico, they must have a large staff. They must have all kinds of top secret equipment that they can do a thorough investigation into our son's murder. The other thing that they can do is coordinate with the Army Casualty and Mortuary Affairs operations and get information from that. This will help get a death certificate, get our son's remains to us quicker, okay? They can also investigate the circumstances surrounding Halliday's murder. They can conduct additional interviews. It's been 15 months and they still have not interviewed a solid interview with the officer of the court that put in a CID and FBI complaint about the misgoings in the CID and leaking to Leilani Hart, Tavita Nusa Leilani Hart. That still hasn't been investigated. They have done nothing in 15 months in Richard's case. And we have given them all kinds of leads. So I don't know why they're so slow. I don't know why that they are not acting on the leads that we're giving them to investigate. And but I think things have changed today. It's a very positive. I hope it is. Let's all watch them because we're told that they will go to El Paso, that they will look at physical evidence, that they will do DNA checks, that they will do the phone, the metadata, the tower dumps. They will look at all of that information. They will collaborate with other agencies to do this. Now, we have a very hard time with the CID office there at Fort Bliss because they have such conflicts of interest. First Sergeant Jay Pollan, very good friend at the time, very good friend, that was a CID agent right there at Fort Bliss. And also Leilani Hart, the mother of XO, First Lieutenant Dallas Hart and I will maintain this because of the witnesses that I have. Okay? Witnesses, not just one, witnesses that Dallas Hart was in Delta Battery 143. Okay? So I had to go over the witness statements to make sure so I could say this. We have witnesses on record that say Dallas Hart was with Delta Battery 143, and it looks like he was the XO. Okay, there's a little bit of shimmy there with the platoon leader or the XO. Maybe he was both. So that is something that they can look at. They could deny that that's the truth. They could prove. They could help Dallas Hart out by backing him up with some legitimate paperwork, reports. But right now, with our witnesses, not witnesses, I will maintain that he was absolutely part of Delta Battery 143. And that makes it very, you see the conflict of interest in the CID. So now he has a relative, because Tavita Nusa was a distant relative, according to James Hart. James Hart told me that Tavita Nusa was a cousin, okay, and of Leilani Hart. But Leilani Hart also had a very close relationship with him that was intimate, and she was bragging to others. We have an El Paso police report that she was bragging, and they were concerned, so they had to put a police report that she was running the CID office there at Fort Bliss. Now, we have a report that Soto is still there, and we have we just need an outside agency. We need to get rid of this conflict of interest. We've been fighting that conflict of interest since 2020. We went into that big meeting with the 15 plus agencies with Lieutenant two-star generals. Now they've been rewarded with 3 stars each. I think they should be removed from those uniforms and give us back our beautiful uniforms with our stars, because they were both there, Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe and Lieutenant General Donna Martin, and they were out of uniform at this very, very important meeting with a fraud, waste, and abuse, because they spent a lot of money and they staged the task force find Richard Halliday, okay? And they never told us that our son was a whistleblower, that he was illegally exposed by Tavita Nusa. Okay, now who is Tavita Nusa? We have been leaked, and they need to confirm this too, that Tavita Nusa, the special agent that lost his badge, Tavita Nusa was also the special agent in charge of Richard's CID complaint about his unit. So he was supposed to protect Richard as a whistleblower. And instead, he illegally exposed Richard, putting a target on his back so that he could be continuously and severely retaliated against. All right? And he was continuously and severely retaliated against. And everyone that has watched these live streams absolutely knows the absolute they wanted to smoke Richard. They wanted to smoke him. They wanted to chew him up. And that wasn't enough for them. They had to silence him, and that's why they ended up murdering him and dismembering him so that no one could find his remains. But the desert keeps things, preserves things, and his remains were found. It's not like the Leon River bank. It's the desert. And so his remains, and it's caliche, so you can't really dig deep, so his remains were discovered, and it has not been denied. It has not been denied in several locations. And so what can this CID do? They can do a lot right now, because they can expose this cover-up. They can expose where Richard's remains are being held. They can expose who murdered Richard, because, we have reports that the murderer's DNA was found. We have reports that it was tampered with. We have reports that there was help in dismembering his body and dividing his body and putting his remains in different areas. So the CID there at Quantico, when they go to El Paso and um, do their high tech investigation, they can look at all kinds of technology to backtrack. This is not too late. We're in 2023. It is not too late. Canines can smell things for 15 years. And we're talking about the desert, and we're talking about technology with the phone, with other means of metadata that they can collect. I've collected tons and tons and tons of screenshots and metadata in our investigative duty that they commissioned us to do for the love of our son. And I will be, I've been giving that out, and I'll give even more out. So they will. I think another thing that they need to do is they need to recall all of the retirees. General Garrett needs to be recalled out of retirement. First Lieutenant Jay Paulin out of retirement. Command Sergeant Major Jakovitz needs to be recalled out of retirement. All of these First Lieutenant Dallas Hart out of retirement. They need to be brought back in. All the soldiers that were not flagged, that were part of the unit, they need to all be returned to Fort Bliss. This all can happen. They need to be returned to Fort Bliss, and they need to be available for interviews by the CID Quantico. No more games. No more hiding. No more dishonoring our country. No more dishonoring our service members. No more dishonoring families. Families of our service members. No more dishonoring the remains of our service members and our country. And Veronica Escobar, Cover Up Veronica, she can absolutely get behind this. Bring back everyone out of retirement. The Army can do it. And all the unit members that were in Richard's unit, they can bring back to Fort Bliss. No more games. And they need to do this right. And then they need to give us the remains of our son. And then they can hold accountable those who are so cold-blooded and demonic to carry out something like this, be it the murder or be it the cover-up. That's really the main thing that I wanted to say. The other thing, I have one more thing. I should post it up here. That I wanted to mention is, let's see if I can get this just right. Yeah. So here it is. We want to say thank you so much for the 1,000 letters, for the 1,000 days to Inspector General Michael Horowitz, because we really feel like that brought forth this Quantico meeting where we can relaunch the investigation into the murder of our son. And I'm going to tell you, the whole meeting was about the murder of Richard, not about a missing soldier. It was about the murder of Richard. And so they are absolutely aware, and they are absolutely preparing to do a thorough investigation, going to Fort Bliss to get this done. Okay, that was what I got from that meeting. I and then so because we had success with the 1,000 letters for 1,000 days, we're launching a new campaign, and the new campaign is the media. They need to lose their tax exempt status if they are biased and political, because under the IRS rules for tax exempt status, a news media cannot be biased and political. They need to cover all the big stories. That's why we give them special treatment and privilege, so that, because it's okay to be biased, right? It's okay to be biased, but not have special privileges, and on Americans' dime, when we want unbiased news. We want some sources that are unbiased. And so if you're tax exempt status, you are supposed to be the ones that we go to that cover all the stories. And I will tell you right now that my experience in the last few months, a few months ago with El Paso Matters, when it came to my attention that Leilani Hart was accusing an officer of the court of murder, of attempted murder. Okay? Attempted murder. I think that would be the best way to describe this. And they were making her very legitimate. And they were like, did you know that Leilani Hart's in the news? And I'm like, oh, let me go check that out. And I checked it out, and I downloaded that story, and we dissected that story. Of course we did. This is a main suspect in the murder of our son. Of course we did. Okay? So we I'm sorry. It's just, these people are demonic and cold-blooded, just cold-blooded. So we dissected it, and it was such a weak story. And yet El Paso Matters, who we talked to when we were there in El Paso, has not even covered our son's story. And I put a complaint in saying, your weak story is hurting the investigation into our missing soldier son. Because at that time, we didn't have, even though I have been suspecting that he was murdered. Of course. But I put in a complaint with the journalist. Well, Miss Corcherga is the one that she's has more rank in El Paso Matters and KTEP, and she called me, and we talked, and her concern was political. And it was insulting. And it was, she disrespected us. I mentioned that I was on TikTok trying to get out the information for my son. And she goes, well, I don't go on TikTok. And I'm like, you don't have a missing son. And where are you? Are you willing to get my son's name out there? Get this story out there? Where was she? That's what comes to my mind. In these last weeks thinking about this phone call. I wouldn't have to go onto TikTok if Miss Corcherga was, El Paso Matters was covering my son's story. So, and absolutely in this discussion, there was political motive behind the phone call. The phone call was not to cover Richard's story. It was not to apologize for legitimizing the main suspect in the murder of our son. It was a political reason. And it had nothing to do with Richard. And I thought that was appalling. And I think that so many of us agree that our media has lost its way. If they're biased, fine. We understand that. But they've gotten out of hand, and they have become more political attack dogs than anything. And the reason why I'm launching this campaign is because El Paso Matters is tax exempt. They're not supposed to be biased. They're supposed to cover our son's story. This is an El Paso story. And even the 1,000 days she did not call me back. They did not cover Richard's story. Amongst many other newspapers or news organizations. And I think that is absolutely despicable. So when it comes to El Paso Matters and our dealings with them, we are launching this campaign to ask people to contact the IRS. We give you the email address. We give you El Paso Matters tax exempt number, and for an example letter, I wrote it down. I am writing this complaint against El Paso Matters for violations against their tax exempt status. They have intentionally participated in politics by choosing not to publish a major story in El Paso. Despite a request, they covered the story. The story of the disappearance and murder of Fort Bliss soldier Richard Halliday, who has been missing for over 1,000 days. The mother of the missing soldier spoke to a member of El Paso Matters, and that reporter disrespected her and expressed the story was not in line with their interest. They also showed politics. They published a story that was filled with lies and politically legitimized one of the prime suspects in Richard Halliday's case. They interfered with the investigation. The failure to follow up on a story is a clear demonstration that they are not a nonprofit organization, but rather a political attack dog. Give us Richard's remains. So that is, you can, I have it. This is the photograph, the image, but I posted it up on Find Richard Halliday for you to cut and paste. And that I hope that I know there's so many of us that are so absolutely disappointed in our news media. They have abandoned us. They have misled us. They have put psyops on us and hypnotized us. And we're worse off for them. And we should be better off for them because they are our oversight. They are our eyes and ears. And they've betrayed us. And so we've been betrayed by so many. Normally, you hear me say that our 44 four-star generals and admirals are serving foreign and domestic enemies instead of defending the Constitution, the land, and the people, which is true. And when you look at this case and you think of your son volunteering for the military and being so excited, look how beautiful he is. Being so excited and being the distinguished honor graduate for basic training and advanced individual training for his cycle. And then to get to his leadership, his post, Delta Battery 143, only to find out that there's some kind of sex cult, perverts, misusing items and forging things and messing with children. You just can't even imagine. And they would want to protect their crimes so much that they would retaliate against Richard, not only retaliate, but expose Richard, target Richard, retaliate against him, haze him, bully him, waterboard him. As his godmother says, they waterboarded him. And then for it to escalate to murder, dismember, being cut asunder, I can't even say it. And then to be divided amongst them so that some people would put him here. You're going to go that direction. You can dump his body here, pieces here. You can dump his pieces here. Now, what kind of demonic force has our military become that they would cover up such a crime? They were trying to do it with Vanessa. They found the remains. They were kicking the garbage can and putting their fists through the walls, I'm sure. And when they found out that Richard was murdered and dismembered, and he was a whistleblower, and he was exposed, and then some of his remains and fragments were put into Mexico, and he was in uniform, and there was other things found. These are the reports that we're getting that lead us to believe that somehow he was arrested. Is that how they abducted him? And there's DNA, y'all. And El Paso Matters doesn't want to cover this story. El Paso Matters doesn't care about our service members. El Paso Matters doesn't care about our national protection, our national defense. El Paso Matters doesn't care about these violent crimes against our young volunteer sons and daughters. It's not of their interest to cover, and they get tax-exempt status. We need oversight, y'all. Representative Veronica Escobar is not giving us oversight. She's too busy swearing oaths to swearing to oaths that she totally breaks, or getting others to swear oaths to what they break. And I don't know if they know the implication of that in God's sight. because God doesn't take oath breaking lightly. She could be doing so much, and she has betrayed this country. And I believe by not acting, it's treasonous, because this is a national threat. When our volunteer sons and daughters can have this kind of level of crime committed against them, and the cover up, and then the crime against the family during the cover up. Don't forget about the asymmetric warfare tactics. Don't forget about the military operations against us. And so today is a good day for one little bit, not because of Veronica Escobar. She's a cover up master, or I think she's committed treason. And I've said this about our Secretary of the Army. I think now too, absolutely, and I think General McConville, General Garrett, Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe, Lieutenant General Donna Martin, absolutely need to be arrested. There's not a doubt for me that they have lied and weaponized themselves against an active duty soldier unlawfully, and against his family unlawfully. And then made us the investigators. Bring us leads. I will take questions now. Quantico, it looks like we were told absolutely they're going to go to El Paso. So that's good news. Jerry, thank you so much. Then she needs to go kiss a rhino. Yeah, shame on the media. Absolutely. El Paso Matters is run by the same editor who was chief editor of El Paso Times. I didn't know that. So I was right from the start that he was forced kidnapped to Mexico. I bet arrest was fake just so the killers could kill him. Um, from the information that we have, I'm thinking that too. I'm thinking that too. I was thinking he was lured out of the barracks by a female. I don't think so now. I don't think so. I think it was attempted, but it didn't work. And that's what I'm thinking, that it was an arrest. Um, it was an abduction. I pray Quantico will give you the answers and bring Richard home. Thank you. Absolutely. And they could do some things. I wrote it down here, what they could do. Of course, they could, what I said earlier, work with the Armed Forces Medical Examiner, the Army Casualty and Mortuary Affairs. They can assist the family in obtaining the death certificate. We have the doctor that supposedly signed the death certificate, his name. And I'm trying to get a hold of him. Okay, I am. We are trying to do that. It's so crazy. We don't have a big staff. So everything takes us a little bit of time. So thank you so much. CID can, and why don't they do it for us? Why don't they call us and tell us, oh no, these leaks, I don't know where you got them from, but it's not true. They're not denying it, y'all. And it makes it, everything makes sense now. The CID can investigate the circumstances. They can hold responsible, and they can work with um, the main the the main decision makers. I think the legal people to give us back, his remains, to give us Richard's remains. So that's where we're all at right now. Is we want Richard's remains. That is what we absolutely, the whole conversation today was to get Richard's remains, that Richard was murdered. And that needs to be investigated. It needs to be investigated thoroughly. Nothing's been done for 15 months. And everybody knows that we have written letters. We have turned in all kinds of stuff, and nothing was done with it. Nothing. So now is a turning point. And so, and there is, they only have a little bit of time. I'll let people know that more about that tomorrow. There is a suspense date on all of that before we act on their negligence and their dereliction of duty. So, yeah, it's to that point with all the information that we have. So, because we want our son's remains coming on every night, it's not something I want to do in the future. Is my whole life come on here and try to get my son's remains. There has to be a suspense date. There has to be coverage. There has to be action coming out of Representative Cover-Up Veronica's office. There has to be action coming. If she's not going to do it, then we need to reelect someone else that will. We need to get action coming out of the DA's office there, especially our protection, since we have been threatened and bullied and put through hell. And not a peep from the DA that is there now, Bill Hicks. I thought he cared about victims. So we need to get someone that does care. And Jaime Esparza, who was just for the second time, took an oath that he absolutely means to break or breaks. Where is he? Where is he? And so many other of the Attorney USA. So in that, we addressed that too in the meeting today. And we should be getting the name of the Attorney USA that the CID Quantico is going to use to write up these subpoenas in the very, very quickly, the investigation going forward. So, yeah, so that was huge news again today. Huge. And I want to leave with reminding everyone that the same leadership that was over the absolute evil at Fort Hood in July of 2020 is the same leadership that was over Richard's brutal murder at Fort Bliss in July of 2020. Same month, same year, and these are sister installations, military installations. Same command, same CID command. And I think that's very, very important for people to realize the suffering that that we have gone through because of trying to not have another Vanessa Guillen. And it was contagious. It was contagious to the highest levels where they brought in um, Sean Bernabe, and he was a 1 star. They made him a 2 star, and then by the time he left, he was a 3 star to cover this up. And I know that this is not good for the brand, but what the cover up is far worse. Far worse. Far worse. And it's like, yeah. You can just be speechless. There's no words to describe the level of crime this is by our institutions. 15 plus agencies were sitting in that meeting knowing that this was staged. And I don't know how many knew that Richard was a exposed whistleblower who was targeted, retaliated against severely, and brutally murdered, cut asunder, divided, and placed in different places, and then found and autopsy. I mean, this is all. He was labeled CONUS Dust One Missing, November 25th, 2020. They already had found, according to our leaks, four finds of partial remains of Richard by then. If you can wrap your head around that, that's the level of evil. That's the level of cover-up. So, if they come back and they deny or whatever they find or whatever, I'll be the first ones to tell you. As of right now, there's been no denial. So our new hashtag is Give Us Richard's Remains. Hashtag Give Us Richard's Remains. Okay, everyone. Thank you, everyone. God bless you. God bless you, Kat. God bless you, Grace. Grace, I put up the coins. Thank you so much. Danielle, thank you. God bless you. James, thank you so much. God bless you, too. And Jerry also. See if I find anyone else on here. Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. Your instincts were so correct from the beginning, starting with the first meeting. Yep. Shame on the media. Yep. Well, it was really easy because they were just claiming things about Richard that were so outrageous and so absurd. It didn't make sense. And for the military to not contact family, and then in the midst of Vanessa Guillen and Gregory Morales to take Richard off the rolls after they had failed to contact family and to throw us out was also a sign of cover-up. Okay? Pontius Pilate, let me wash my hands of this, right? But they had blood on their hands. Okay? They were far worse than Pontius Pilate. And we were thinking, what's going on here? And the smear campaigns on Richard. The way they brought us back on the rolls, the way they put Richard back on the rolls was also weird. And 36 days to not even launch an investigation, not even put Richard's face in the news, it tells you a lot, especially if you're military. There's not one military organization, not the Air Force, not the Navy, not the Coast Guards, not the Marines, not the Army, that would let 36 days go by with a missing soldier and not put it in the media, not do an investigation. There was no investigation into his whereabouts. I think that is very telling. So there are, the lists that I brought to the meeting, but I didn't talk about them. The meeting didn't go in that direction. But I had hard facts, a whole list of hard facts. Top of it is they made us investigators, and Dollar General Man turned out to be the father-in-law of Lieutenant Colonel Bugado in the G3 of the 32nd ADCOM, that claim that absolutely with confidence, and we have the video that Richard went missing, was found in Juarez. His remains were found. He's dead. And shh, it was a secret. So even that makes sense now. Even that makes sense. So, so we have a lot of hard facts. There's lots more on there. Irregularities. So many irregularities, like they made us the investigators. You can put the same thing on so many different lists. And then, of course, the misstatements, the misinformation. And that list is so long. So long. So thank you, everybody. And we will absolutely press for everyone that retired during this to be brought back into the Army. And that all of the service members be brought back to Fort Bliss for a proper investigation, because this has been a botched investigation. They never flagged the unit. They deployed the unit out all over the world before this investigation was completed. And that hindered this investigation. So thank you so much. God bless you. And I will be back tomorrow.